Hi everyone, welcome to the final video of the session. This time we're going to be using Adobe Express, which again I'm a very big fan of. I'll say this works very well with Creo in particular, but it also has its own AI tools as well. Now it's not a software that you can download, it's cloud based only. So what you would need to do to access it is navigate to adobe.com or adobe.co.uk, doesn't matter which one. Click on the little blue circle in the top right and choose to log in. Make sure you log in with your student email address. So typically your number-based email address. So for instance, 12345678 at stu.mmu.ac.uk. If it prompts you to choose between a personal or enterprise account, make sure you choose enterprise. And then once you're logged in, because all students have been granted a free Adobe license because we pay for it for everyone. Once you've logged in, it should say you have access to all of these software. And the one we're going to click on is Adobe Express, this one just here. So again, no need to install. It's all in the cloud. Now, if you've never heard of Adobe Express before, essentially it's a cloud-based software that takes the best elements of Photoshop, Illustrator, a little bit of InDesign and some Premiere Pro, but it's also got some very cool AI tools as well that we can explore. Now, some people do kind of struggle with the interface a bit of this, again, because it's cloud-based. You can start by uploading your own content or clicking the Generate with AI button. That's absolutely fine to do. You can browse their existing templates to start working through those if you wish to. But the way I like to use this is simply just to click on the little bluey purpley circle over here on the left with the plus icon. So this brings up the Get Started panel. Now you can choose the Create panels. It's the same as most Adobe software where you can specify a document size, but you've also got quick actions. So for instance, we've got resize image, crop image, automatically remove backgrounds. And the great thing with this is it will do all of these things with AI tools. So you don't need to manually mask out this shoe, for instance. You just say remove background and it will automatically chop it out. So it's fantastic for generating images and assets. Now again, I can scroll down here, for instance. I can automatically add captions to videos. I can convert things to MP4 files. I can merge documents together. I can remove elements from an image, again using generative AI. I can insert objects. There's so many different things I can do. I think the two we'll focus on today are generating images using Adobe Firefly, which is Adobe's AI engine within Adobe Express. And we're also going to have a look at generating some text effects as well, so we can start making more engaging images. Now, before I proceed with this, I just also want to mention there is also a Learn tab just over here on the left. Highly recommend you click on this. Just have a quick scroll through. If there's something in particular you're looking to do, for instance, if you wanted to learn about video, you could click on the video tab. Straight away, you can see how you can export videos, how you can trim clips, how you can make text and objects pop up with animations. Super easy to use. Super easy. But again, for now, I'm just going to click on Quick Actions. I'm going to click on Generate Image. So by default, it's just come up with a generic image size. I can always change this later. You'll see that there is a resize button just up here. This will change the size of the canvas. But I'm not going to worry about that for now. Instead, I'm just going to use my prompt box, and it works the exact same way as it does in both Creo and LookX and all other AIs. So what you'll find with Adobe Express is that it's an ethically trained AI. Adobe's Firefly AI is ethically trained. So it means it's not going to use any copyrighted content. It's all open source. So I think the thing I would like to do first, let's all try and make an image of Spider-Man climbing a building, for instance. So if I type in Spider-Man climbing a building. I'm not going to specify anything else for now. I'm just going to click on Generate. Let's see if it will generate me a Spider-Man. So we've got a man climbing a building. What else do we have? It's all men climbing buildings. None of them look like Spider-Man. And the reason for that is because the model it's using doesn't know what Spider-Man looks like. Because again, it's only using open source information, nothing that's copyrighted. So it's a really, really nice software to use purely because of that, because you know you're not infringing on anyone's copyright. There are various ways to try and get around things. So for instance, I could say superhero in red and blue onesie, for instance. Climbing a building. Let's see if that brings us any closer. It's obviously not going to be Spider-Man. More like Superman, if anything. But you kind of get the idea. I'm not sure why it's giving him a cape. In fact, yeah, that's much more Superman than Spider-Man. But you get the idea. You know, straight away we can start kind of generating things. And this will generate absolutely anything that you want it to do. It's very much like Creo. But the great thing with this is you don't need to pay a penny because it's all fully funded. It's all part of your Adobe license. Now, very much the same way as what we've just been exploring, you can also add in reference images and compositions. So for instance, for the composition, that would be much more like the control nets that we were just using with the sketch image that we had a minute ago. And then we've also got styles here as well. So I think I'm going to type in a cabin in the woods. In fact, a modern cabin. A modern cabin in the woods made from wood and glass. Let's try the exact same two images. Let's see what it does. So firstly, let's use the same sketch. So that's the composition, the reference image. The style, I want it to take from that one I created in Creo. I'm not going to change anything else just yet. I'm just going to click on generate. Let's see what this produces. This already looks so much closer to what I was expecting LookX to produce. This is infinitely better. So straight away, I think this looks much closer to my original sketch. It's not my sketch, remember, it's one that I've borrowed from the internet. I think this one here. Whether it's a logical design is a different story. I'm not fully sure I agree with the design resolution of this, but it's not bad. Now, the great thing with this as well is I can also further come into the content type. So I can specify whether this is a photo, a graphic, a piece of art. I can then further stylize it. So for instance, I could now turn this into a watercolor if I wanted to. There are so many things I can do with it. And of course, once you're happy with your image, all you need to do is click on download, choose what file type you want. So I'm going to choose PNG. That's going to compile it together. And now I've got myself my rendered image. And that's going to be fairly close to my sketch that I created. Now, as far as I know, there's no way to do a direct overlap. I don't know if I can do a direct comparison between the sketch and what it's produced. I could obviously overlay them in Photoshop if I wanted to check it. But I think this is close enough to what I want it to be. Now, one thing I would say is if you now wanted to add more elements into this, I don't believe there's a way to directly do in-painting within this. At least I haven't discovered it yet. So if you do find it, let me know. But if I were to add more AI objects, what I could do is... Well, the other thing I would say just quickly about in-painting, sorry. You could, of course, just go to insert object to mask it. That technically would be closer to in-painting. But if you were to add just another object that you can move around, almost like with layers, the fastest way is to deselect your image, reselect it, and then just do copy and paste. So Control-C, Control-V. And then from there, I can now basically do more stuff with this. So for instance, if I go back to generate image, I can now say a person walking away from the camera. I'd remove the styles. I would turn this into a photo and I'd click on generate. So now that's going to do some thinking. Hopefully we end up with a person. That works. Perfectly happy with that. Of course, the problem I have now is I've got my nice image that came from my sketch behind. I want to add this person to it, but you know, there's a background. I'm not happy. So by deselecting and reselecting, brings us back to the beginning of the image palette. I can simply click on remove background, and it's going to chop that person out, which is really, really cool. And the same way as you would do it in Photoshop, you can just scale the people. And of course, if you want to bring people in, find where your horizon line is, move the eyes of the person to roughly where the horizon line is, and then the scale affects how close or how far they are from the camera. So it's a nice way to put people in. Of course, you could do further compositing in Photoshop if you wanted to. If you wanted to blend them with the scene a bit better, you could obviously do that. So there's quite a few things you can do here. Now, what about text? Let's have a play around with some text. In fact, let's do a fresh file for this. And one thing that's worth mentioning, if I just click back on the little Adobe icon, that brings us back to the home page. Notice I didn't actually save my image just then. If I go back to your stuff just here, you'll see it's still got my composition there. It always automatically saves directly into the cloud. Now, if I come back to the home, click on my little blue purple icon, go to quick actions and scroll down, I can go to generate text effects. Now I think the first thing, I'm not happy with the dimensions of my page, so I'm going to click on resize. Again, there's a number of different options we could choose here. I'm going to choose Instagram Reel, which is 1080 by 1920. In fact, I think that's going to do that height ways. I want 1920 by 1080, so let's not choose that one. I could, of course, specify it here as well. If I scroll down to YouTube, I'm going to want it the other way around. There we go. YouTube video, 1920 by 1080. Click on resize. My canvas is now the correct size. I've got my piece of text because, again, I've chosen to generate text. And there's so much I can do with this, it's unreal. So firstly, let's type something in. Let's say dream big. Or we could do a motivational poster. So let's say this is motivation. So obviously a bit too big there, so I can just reduce this down so it all fits into one. Beautiful. Now I think we can all agree this looks a bit boring. So I think let's have a play around with it. Firstly, once I deselect it and reselect it, I can choose various fonts here. It's got all of your standard ones, but we can choose something a bit more interesting. And again, you might need to resize this again until it fits. But that looks kind of interesting to me. I can play around with different forms of orientation and alignments. I can play around with having just an outline and different colors. But we're going to skip all of that and we're going to go straight to generate text effects. Now, this is where it starts getting interesting. So I'm actually going to ignore where it says style for now. I'm going to go straight to sample effects. I'm going to click on view all. Now, I recommend you spend a few minutes playing with some of these. Some of them work really well. Some of them work really badly. I'm just going to show you a couple of examples. So let's say I choose this one here, dry flowers and berries. I'll click on that. And you see what this is doing? It's now converting my text into this kind of collaged, flowers and berries, I suppose. And I've got different results here, just as we had in all the other softwares. I can cycle between these. It will show me different generations. But what it's doing at the moment, if I zoom in, it's the same with the Adobe Photoshop shortcuts, by the way. It's Control plus, Control minus to zoom in and out. If I zoom in, this looks fairly realistic. Maybe I want it to be a bit more abstract. So if I go back into my text effects, instead of realistic, maybe I'm going to choose embellished and click on generate. It will still choose the same colorful dried flowers, but this time I get a bit more of a creative output. Looks a bit more interesting. So again, you can do some seriously cool stuff for this. And again, I've got different generations here, different versions I can explore. And I can type in all sorts of things here. So colourful dried flowers and berries. So I just realised I haven't actually shown you the other versions of this. So we had a look at realistic and embellished. You'd also have pencil sketch. Let's quickly tell that to generate. Again, you can get some really nice effects here. But I would recommend that you start with some of the samples just to play with. In fact, where was that one? Colourful woven thread, for instance. Could be quite interesting. You see at the moment it's stuck on default mode. Oh. Which is kind of okay. It's not too bad. But I think we can make this look a bit more interesting. And again, the best way to do that is go back to your text effects and change it from realistic to embellished. We're just going to generate that. And that looks a little bit more interesting, particularly like on this eye, for instance. You know, we're actually starting to see the shapes kind of emerging from it. We can play around with a few of these until we're happy with the result. You can always generate more as well if you're not happy with any of these. I'm loving this V that's appearing. And if we zoom out and view the whole thing, it looks great. So again, you can do all sorts of stuff with this, you know, whether it's creating images from scratch, whether it's, you know, generating text. You can generate icons and vector elements from this as well. And again, you know, you can add things like drop shadows. You can even animate things really easily. So for instance, this text I've got at the bottom of my text panel, if I click on animation, I could tell this to write like a typewriter. I could have this fading on. Yeah, it's very, very easy to like composite this stuff. So imagine kind of maybe combining some of these short animations here with the animations we did in Korea. Super, super easy to lay these things over each other. And you can always play around in the timeline here to modify how these animations work. And again, once you've finished, click on download, and then you're all good to go. So we're going to leave that there for today. I think that's more than enough to be cracking on with for now. Hopefully it gives you a bit of a crash course into some AI, and we really look forward to seeing how you combine things. Good luck.